Our next guest is Ellie Cohanim, an American broadcast journalist who was Deputy Special Envoy to Monitor and Combat Anti-Semitism at the United States Department of State. She has spoken out against prejudice and hate on many levels. Today, however, she is here also because of her personal heritage. Ms. Cohanim herself was born in Tehran. In watching some of her recent interviews online, I've noticed a strength and poignancy in the questions that really get to the heart of the matter. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us today. I want you, please, if you could just first share a little bit about your heritage so we understand why, in that context, we asked you to join today, although you have so much to say about it in general.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me join you in American Sephardi Federation. It's an organization that I have deep appreciation for your mission and everything that you do every day. I'm so thrilled to participate in Mizrahi Heritage Month. You know, I think one of the untold stories of the world is the ancient tradition and history of Jews that are indigenous to places like Iran and ancient Persia, where I was born, and throughout the Middle East, North Africa. So I'm so grateful that you are holding this commemoration. As you mentioned, I was born in Iran myself. To a family that, you know, all of us Persian Jews, we know that our ancestry dates back to the First Temple period. We were one of the most ancient of Jewish communities, and so we were so Persian, truly so Persian, so intertwined with Persian culture, and deep friendships and ties with our Muslim neighbors and friends. My parents, to this day, have closest relationships and friendships with Iranian friends, Muslim, Jewish, Baha'i, you name it, from Iran. And so that was the beautiful country and culture that I was born into under the Shah's era, predating the 1979 Islamic Revolution, in which Khomeini came in and grabbed power.
And how did you bring that Persian heritage with you? Or how did your parents bring it with you? You were a little young. But how did your parents bring it with you to America?
Well, you know, what I can tell you is that, again, the Persian culture, I think, for Iranian Jews is so intertwined in everything about us, whether it's the cuisine, my mother cooking special Persian food for Shabbat and Chagim, holidays, the Passover celebration where Persian Jews have special traditions. The one that I think people find most amusing is during the Dayanim, when we actually beat each other with scallions. And we think that this, you know, this is a reference back to the Jews being slaves in Egypt, but only Persian Jews have this this tradition of the Pesach Seder, where the stories that I hear about, you know, our life back in Iran was that we would have these huge Pesach celebrations with 50 to 100 family members all gathered together, and this Dayenu part was the part that everyone looked forward to all year round, and it, you know, it got really violent with people taking off belts and throwing things at each other. But you know, it was an incredibly warm family gathering, and I think that was what life in Iran was like for our families. There were 100,000 Jews living in Iran prior to the 1979 revolution, and it was a flourishing Jewish community. We had, you know, all kinds of institutions, meaning synagogues, Jewish schools, and I went through Jewish day school before we had to flee for our lives. And so, you know, you had all the institutions of Jewish community, a beautiful, truly charmed experience, if I may say that, under the Shah. Now, you know, I don't want to whitewash the centuries of experience living in ancient Persia. Certainly there were times where there was rising anti-Semitism, depending on the ruler, right? We're talking about a community that dated back thousands and thousands of years. And so the experience of Jews under Muslim countries, you know, first of all, Jews were there in the region predating the Islamic conquest. But, you know, once we had the Islamic conquest, you had different experiences depending on the leaders of each country at a time. And so there were times when the Jews were flourishing throughout the Middle East, North Africa, and there were certainly times where we were persecuted, oppressed. We faced forced conversions, pogroms, you know, all the worst anti-Semitism that Jews can. experience. But we persisted for millennia. And so that was most recently for the Iranian Jews, again, under the Shah in the pre-1979 period, we were a strong, vibrant, flourishing community, and the Shah had formal relations with the state of Israel. So there was a lot of back and forth between Iranian Jews and Israel as well.
Yeah, many people don't know that, so I want to stress that point. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, though.
No, absolutely. You know, one of the things that's incredible was El Al had ground level storefront apparently in Tehran. And again, there were, you know, business ties, there were commercial ties, diplomatic ties. So all of that was going on under the Shah. And, you know, such that my own father, he had a large construction works company in Iran, and he received a government bid and had brought in Israeli engineers to the country. And so this was what Iran under the Shah was. And I think that many people can imagine that this country that right now is ruled by the Ayatollahs that every day, you know, threaten death to Israel and are building their nuclear capability. And you know, the Ayatollah supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei himself has said that he wishes to, quote unquote, eliminate Israel, right? No one, I think, can imagine that this country that right now spews so much hatred towards Israel and the Jews was once a country that had ties with Israel. And I think that the reality is that the Persian tradition goes also back to Cyrus the Great, who is known for actually encouraging the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. And also, you know, we have the Cyrus Declaration, which was the closest thing in ancient times granting human rights and religious freedom practically to an ancient civilization. And so that, you know, I think is more of a reflection of the Persian culture and Iranian people. And we know that in Iran today, they are yearning to return to that past and for a free future when they can develop ties again between Israel and the Jewish people and see their Jewish brethren, all of us sisters and brothers who are living in the diaspora. I think there's a hope that we will return to our country one day.
And how do you take that as your combating anti-Semitism role? How does your heritage play into that?
What I can tell you is that when I was tasked for the position of Deputy Special Envoy to combat anti-Semitism at the State Department, I think that the Trump administration really understood, and we eventually did designate Iran as the #1 state sponsor of anti-Semitism in the world. And so I believe that the fact that I had personally experienced the regime's anti-Semitism, so again, understand that I was born in Iran to a Jewish family, and we were there for thousands of years. And so we survived all those episodes of persecution over millennia. Fast forward to 1979, we survived thousands of years. And one day we have to pick up and literally run for our lives, and we were blessed to find refuge in the United States of America. And so, you know, what I understood, even though I was a child going through those experiences, what I understood was that anti-Semitism is a hatred that can suddenly take over a society, and even societies that were once so warm and hospitable to Jews, as I'm describing Iran under the Shah was, even those societies can turn overnight. We saw that within Iran in the Iranian Revolution, the Islamic Revolution. We saw it in Lebanon. We saw it in Iraq with the Farhud. We saw this phenomena throughout the Middle East. But also, let's not forget, we saw this happen in Europe before the Holocaust, right? And during the Holocaust, where all of these countries that were once hospitable to Jews, you know, events take place, things happen on the ground, and suddenly it is no longer hospitable. Sometimes these very same countries become dangerous and deadly to Jews. And so for me, having gone through this experience myself of having to flee my own home and homeland, made me understand how serious the threat of anti-Semitism is, and that none of us can ever acquiesce to it. We have to always be very careful and really do everything in each of our power to confront this particular hatred of the Jew.
let's end with something positive. What do you wish, if you could sum up the reclaiming identity, the heritage, what can we give a positive note?
Well, I think that the message that I've shared with audiences over and throughout the world is, first of all, an understanding of the Jewish people and who we are, right? So we are an ancient indigenous people. Mm-hmm. The story of the Jewish people starts with Abraham, which today, the story takes place in Babylonia, which would be today's Iraq. And so that's who the Jewish people are. And so we are, we go to our land, the land of Israel, and so we have had this Jewish presence in Israel and the Middle East. Again, predating the rise of Christianity, predating the rise of Islam. And I think it is so important for American Jewry in particular to understand that we are this ancient indigenous people. And so all these accusations that are kind of being made of Jews being white and having white privilege and white supremacy, it is so incredibly inaccurate. I really encourage all Jews to learn more about our history, about our heritage, and take pride in the fact that we have survived under many empires who try to destroy us. And I think the holiday of Hanukkah is a key holiday for us to remember that many empires that were powerful at the time tried to to eliminate the Jewish people, take away our culture, our heritage, our history, our Torah. And we always won eventually. And so the Jewish people are an eternal people. We have a proud history, and I really hope that all of our children and grandchildren will learn that history and take pride in who we are.
Thank you so much. And like you said, within the greater Jewish experience, not just the Ashkenazi, it's very important that we broaden it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, I know. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing more of your interviews.
Looking forward to being with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.